Hi there, Jake Williams from the Garnish Music Production School here. Just want to show you a clever routing trick in Ableton that has a number of interesting uses, but in this instance allows us to create an instrument rack in which we can dynamically morph between waveforms without having to re-trigger the MIDI note. This gives us a result that is very similar to wavetable synthesis that you find in native instruments Massive, but is in some ways much more powerful. Here is an instrument rack with 4 operators, each with a different waveform loaded. These can of course be our own custom waveforms using the very powerful additive synthesis feature in Operator. If I trigger one continuous droning note, I can do this by setting the loop points after the note on and before the note off in the MIDI clip. We can see the problem using the chain selector inside a normal instrument rack. The chain selector acts as a filter for the MIDI note, so unless the chains are overlapping at the time the note on is received, then that chain isn't triggered. This essentially only allows us to morph between a maximum of 2 chains, which is rather limiting. A neat solution to this is to deploy the sidechain listen feature on the compressor plugin. Before I start, I'm going to set all 4 chains in my instrument rack to be triggered simultaneously. We'll see why in a minute. Over here, I have a rack of 4 compressors. The first has its sidechain set to the output of the first chain in our instrument rack. Operator rack. Chain 1, post effects, because each chain has its own effects on it. The blue headphone listen button is then toggled on. This means that instead of listening to what would normally be outputted from the compressor, i.e. the combined output of all 4 operators in the instrument rack, we are listening to whatever is arriving at the side chain. In this case, the post effects output of the first operator in my instrument rack. I now assign the input of the side chains of the other 3 compressors to the corresponding instrument rack chains. And then map out crossfades between them within the chain selector graph. Now when I trigger my everlasting droning note, I can dynamically morph between all 4 of the waveforms easily. This has some very powerful implications. I can morph between as many chains as an instrument rack will allow. I can use any instrument I like to generate the waveforms: sampler, granular synthesizers, physical modeling, any number of third-party devices, whatever. And each of those waveforms can have their own audio effects on them. Here's another example. I could then group these 2 racks together to potentially form one chain, or oscillator if you will, within a larger instrument rack. The mind boggles. Anyway, this basic rack is available for you to download and check out from the Garnish site on this page. I hope you found these ideas useful. If you have, please stay tuned to the Garnish YouTube channel for more hints and tips on Ableton and electronic music production as a whole.
Yeah.